Welcome to episode number 12 of the Men and Community Podcast. On this episode, Matt shares how being open to diversity can boost your mental health. Carlo shares the power of being supportive, and they both talk about how remaining open-minded can make life better for everyone. Thank you for being part of our community. Well, Matt, welcome to episode number 12. This is somewhat of a reunion for us, isn't it? We haven't recorded in about pretty much a month.
Yeah, maybe even longer.
Yeah.
It's been, I feel like we talk about this in every episode, but it's just been very hard to access each other and to get in the same place for long enough.
And you were away for a couple of weeks here on a trip.
Yeah, got the chance to do a bit more traveling.
Yeah, so it's been a minute. We had a nice time last night celebrating a friend's birthday, so we're recording this the morning after, so I feel like we're fine. I'll speak for myself here. But...
Right, and if you were listening to this as opposed to watching it, go check out YouTube and you can corroborate that there's like no bags under the eyes. We're not hungover.
Yeah, we're just old, not hungover.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we just look normal, disheveled, not alcohol disheveled.
Fantastic. How could you expect any less from us?
That's right.
All right, so should we start with our cards?
Yeah, let's start with the cards, and as usual, we'll leave everybody hanging as to the actual topic of the episode until we get into it.
Perfect. Am I pulling the card first?
Please do.
All right. What skill do you possess that most people don't know about? That's a tough one because I tell everybody about everything.
Because you have all the skills.
Shut up.
Every skill.
Shut up. Like, it's kind of true, I suppose. What skill do I have that most people don't know about? I used to do a lot of woodworking. So I wouldn't say I'm amazing at it because I don't have the space or equipment to really do a lot of it. But I like to do little projects such as, I took an old pallet, tore it down, cleaned it up, stained it, and turned it into a wall-mounted Scotch whiskey shelf that holds all my nice bottles of Scotch because I'm a Scotch guy. I'm working on a planter for my backyard, again made out of old pallets. So it's like nothing terribly complicated. Like I'm not doing like dovetails and stuff, but I don't have the equipment for that anyways. I probably would if I did. But yeah, I guess that's maybe my closet skill is I can do woodworking. I'm pretty handy with my hands in a lot of different ways around the house. So
cool. The one that's coming to mind first for me, which, might be a bit of a cop-out because it's a bit of an outdated skill. I played piano for 11 years of my life.
I think I knew this.
And so, I started when I was 6 years old and played all the way into high school and did several Royal Conservatory exams. And the way that Royal Conservatory of Music works, you don't have to do every sequential exam. So I think I did grade 1, 2, 4, and 6 or something like this. But when you get to grade 6 of Royal Conservatory of Music, you have to do theory of music, which very easy. It's just really understanding the construction of music. It's very mathematical and formulaic and things like this. But I refused. I just didn't want to do the grade 1 theory test to coincide with the grade 6 music exam. So to this day, the Royal Conservatory of Music won't send me my grade 6 certificate proving that I've completed grade 6 because I won't do this very rudimentary theory exam that I could probably pass today, having not, done any music theory training in years.
And it kind of surprises me that you are staying so beholden to not doing this because you're a big fan of higher education, and I wouldn't say having that piece of paper means a lot to you, but like you have some pieces of paper behind your name. So the fact that you don't have that piece of paper, I feel like your collection is lacking. You're going to have to get on that.
It's true, but also at the same time, I'm just like stubborn and also anti-bureaucracy. So, I just was like down with the Royal Conservatory of Music. Anyway, so that's my skill. I, at one point in my life, was a very proficient piano player and still can, tinkle them ivories when the occasion comes.
Ah, yes, tinkle the ivories. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, next time we have a piano, I'm going to ask you to play.
Ding, ding, ding. Ding, ding, ding. Ding, 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 ding. Oh, we went in different directions.
2 different songs, yeah.
If a person were opposite from you in every way, where they would live, and what they, oh, hold on, I totally missed, there should be commas in here or something. If a person were opposite from you in every way, where would they live and what would they be like? So the person who's completely your opposite, where would they live and what would they be like? So I think for me, someone who's completely opposite from me in every way, they're probably going to live on a farm or in some sort of a rural community without a lot of access to, the amenities that you would find in a big urban center. I think that's kind of the main thing. A lot less density of humans, a lot less access to being around people.
Yeah.
They would be very content living a life dedicated to mastering one thing over the course of their entire life, and just really, really appreciate them having the opportunity to be of service through this one act, whether it be agriculture or ranching or something of that nature. I think that would be opposite to me in the sense that I just need that broad exposure,
Sure,
and access to people and the ability to operate within a fairly metro area.
like I agree with everything that you said. However, I feel like I went a different direction with my answer, because the complete opposite would be like a bad human. He wouldn't be a good person. So like you're talking about, hey, I love a broad spectrum of skills and being of service in all these different spaces. So the opposite of me would be just one skill and one service. Well, I'm thinking like, I like to be a person of service. This person would not want to be.
So they'd be living in jail.
No, not necessarily, but they would be like very secluded. Like, don't talk to me. He'd be the guy who'd be like, get off my lawn, right? That was a shotgun noise.
Classic Clint.
Sure.
That's
Oh,
Clint
Eastwood, you
yeah.
mean? Yeah, well. It's also kind of just a trope at this point, so I feel like he doesn't own it.
Fair enough.
But yeah, that he would just be like, don't come near me, don't talk to me. He's the guy that gets, lives in that rural town that gets his groceries delivered, but the instructions say leave the groceries on the front porch and run away before I shoot you, kind of thing. So yeah, he just wouldn't be a fun person to be around. You wouldn't benefit from being around him, because that's a big thing for me, is I want you to gain value from spending time with me. So yeah, interesting cards.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
I like them.
All right.
Let's dive right in. So we're recording this right now. It's June of 2023. And we were talking about how it seems as if there are, every time you turn around, each day or month is dedicated to the recognition, acknowledgement, amplification, respect for awareness of different initiatives, programs, social movements,
minority groups,
absolutely, equity, diverse, deserving groups, that sort of thing. And June, there's some pretty significant ones, and so we thought that this was a really good opportunity for us to chat on some of these things. So for those of you who may not be aware, and this at least is true in Canada, this might not be universally true wherever you might be, June is Men's Mental Health Awareness Month.
Which, of course, as the Men and Community podcast, we can't glance over. That's a big deal.
Yeah, wanted to make sure that we spoke to that. June is also National Indigenous History Month in Canada, and so that's a really, really important piece, that I've come to learn a lot about, and just have so much respect and appreciation for the role that our Indigenous peoples have in terms of crafting the history of the lands in which we get to live our lives on and in. And then, of course, June is also, again, I'm not sure, I know this is true in North America, I'm not sure if this is true other places as well, but June is also Pride Month.
Yes.
And so an opportunity to express pride and appreciation and respect for everybody in our LGBTQ2IA plus communities. And so, yeah, we wanted to craft a little bit of a conversation today about these things. I don't know about you, but I find that a lot of the grumbling that I hear from, your your cis white heterosexual male community is like, oh, there's a day for everything. Why isn't there a day? Well, it turns out that there is Men's Mental Health Month, and this is it. But we want to talk about how those three things are important and
Sure.
how they interact with each other.
And I think as we were kind of discussing this topic yesterday, we narrowed in on this idea that why this is important for us as men to understand, not just June and this month, but every month, is because if you're someone that listens to our podcast because you resonate and kind of think the same way that Matt and I do, it's because you want to be of value to your community. You want to be a leader, somewhat of a pioneer. You want to be someone that provides benefit and growth opportunities to the people around you. And I feel that it would be hard to do something like that if you didn't acknowledge events such as this. And again, not just June, not just because it's men's mental health or Pride Month, but every opportunity. And I can understand where someone might say that having a day for everything seems like it distracts from the importance sometimes of these things. But why would it be such a bad thing to raise awareness for these certain elements? Why would it be such a bad thing to have, a month where people get to maybe celebrate and go a little bit farther than they would in their normal lives of the victories that they've had? Because outside of June, outside of an environment such as this podcast, how often do we talk about men's mental health? Like, it's becoming more prominent now in things like social media. But other than that, how often is it talked about? Not very often. I feel like Pride maybe gets talked a little bit more about just because it's very in the news right now with a lot of different things. But again, why is it such a terrible thing to celebrate it? I actually got the opportunity to be part of, I have people in my life that are of the LGBTQ community, and I had the honor of being part of the Pride Parade here in Calgary in 2020, I think. No, 2019. And I had so much fun just being part of that environment and just feeling the excitement. There was nothing different about it outside of normal life. These were all just regular people, but what was fun about it is that they were getting the opportunity to celebrate and live out loud just being happy and having this moment of time for themselves. And I think every group of people, every belief, every minority, every whatever should have the opportunity to do that. And if it takes a day on a calendar to give them that freedom, then why not?
Yeah, and I think that the first thing that I want to speak on, I guess, in this regard is there's this weird narrative that comes out whenever we as a society start allowing space for equity deserving groups. And in case you haven't heard, those of you who are listening, the term equity deserving group, the term equity really refers to the idea that as different groups of people with different experiences, cultural backgrounds, and different identifying markers, they require and deserve different support. Not the same support, because equality meaning that everybody has equal opportunity to participate in society. But we know that if with people from different backgrounds who experience different barriers to participation, having equal opportunity isn't enough for them to participate, because that might not be enough to allow them to overcome their barriers.
Sure.
So when we talk about equity deserving groups, what we're saying is anybody who experiences different barriers as a result of whether it be their cultural background or their sexuality or their gender identification or whatever it is, that they are given the opportunity to participate in the same way, not just given the same treatment and expected to be able to participate in the same way.
Sure.
So for me, something that I really, really struggle with is the idea that for some reason, a lot of people have it in their heads that there's a zero-sum game when it comes to advocating for the wellness of everybody. Meaning, if we're going to take space and create space for the LGBTQ community to celebrate Pride, or we're going to create space for Indigenous peoples to have a month to really acknowledge and celebrate and show respect for their heritage and history, somehow that's going to take away from everybody else, right?
Yeah.
And that's something that I really, really am passionate about, trying to refute that narrative that why is it that we have to do one at the expense of another, when in reality, I think that as you're talking about experiences with Pride, which, you know, for me, I really attribute to spaces where everybody feels safe and comfortable in an environment. To me, that's what Pride really symbolizes, or recognizing the role that our Indigenous peoples play in our world today and have played in stewarding this land, right? I think that all of those contribute in a really meaningful way. And when we talk about men's mental health, I think an appreciation and respect for those two things goes a long way into ensuring the mental health for all men.
Agreed. Yeah, and to your point of, you know, people feeling that it takes away from your life, let's look at it through the lens of men's mental health. Okay, because men, in my opinion, is a broader spectrum than Indigenous and LGBTQ, because people that identify as men fall into those categories.
Absolutely.
Right? So
there's crossovers, Venn diagrams.
Exactly, yeah. Yep. So if we look at it through the lens of men's mental health, how does bringing awareness or putting any sort of specialization on supporting the men in your life this month a little bit more than you did last month, how does that hurt you? How can it? Right? If anything, you know, saying, hey, it's men's mental health month, I'm going to call a friend I haven't talked to in a while and just check in with him. How is that not something that you would benefit from? Are you saying that you don't benefit from talking to a friend? That you don't benefit from celebrating a win in his life? Like, it doesn't make any sense to me how a new experience and a new opportunity to raise awareness in your own life for something could be negative to you in any way, right? Like, you'd have to be so set in your ways that you'd be unwilling to explore or appreciate anything outside of your day-to-day humdrum of a life, right? And again, that expands to, you know, to everything else. So I think as the broader spectrum or the broader scope of this episode, to me, as with everything we talk about, it's just about being open and willing to explore new things in life. Like, I don't really care how you feel about the LGBTQ community, but attending a Pride parade or a Pride celebration just to experience that feeling is something that you as a human can grow from.
So let me ask you this. What have you learned through your experiences participating in Pride-related events that you now use in the service of your mental health?
Ooh, good question. You know, I never had any sort of misgivings or hesitancy when it came to anything LGBTQ. So for me, being exposed and experiencing those things, I wouldn't say had any sort of different shift in the way I think about stuff, but it did, I guess, make me more aware of the feeling that some people have about being marginalized and oppressed, right? Like, I come from that white, male, North American, you know, all category. So my oppression level, I guess, is relatively low. So I've never felt oppressed. So it's just that having that level of awareness that is something that people feel even in our world today opened my eyes a little to realize that sometimes there needs to be an understanding of that to try and relate and provide value and be of service to somebody that falls in those categories. And I'm not saying you treat somebody in those categories any different. Your goal should be to treat everybody across the world the exact same way, but sometimes having an understanding of their mindset can sometimes help a little bit to, I guess, relate and communicate just a little bit more effectively. I would say maybe that's what I've learned.
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. Well, you were talking about that. I was kind of, I'd asked you that question, and then in my head, I started asking myself the same thing. So through my work, I am incredibly, incredibly lucky to get to support a group of multi-nation elders across Treaty 7. Quick rewind for those of you watching this that don't live in Alberta or perhaps even Canada. In many regions of Canada, we have both ceded and unceded traditional territories. This means that either there was land that was set aside for Indigenous peoples to reside on under the treaties that were signed with the Canada government and Indigenous peoples. And so we in Calgary reside on Treaty 7 territories. So I get the chance to work very, very closely with this really, really cool collection of multi-nation elders from across Treaty 7. And one of the things that I've really taken away and learned through the lessons that I've been able to receive from these elders is the importance, two things. One is the importance of connecting with the land. And so for my own mental health, I know how important it is for me to get outside, to connect with the land. In our Costa Rica episode, we talked about this moment that I had with this tree that I got to plant, and how special and meaningful it was for me to give back to the land and connect with the land in that way, understanding how much the land provides to us and to me. And so that really helps reset me from a mental health perspective. And then second, I think too often we like to try to categorize and segment things, right? So my physical health is over here, my social health is over here, my emotional health, my mental health, my financial health, whatever these things are. Well, in a traditional Indigenous way of knowing, there's just health.
Yeah.
Right? The idea that we would fragment and section all of these things out is really, really ludicrous. So while, yes, we're going to have, and I have goals in each of these areas, I sometimes need to remind myself to take a step back and just ask very, very simply, do I feel well? And that has to be kind of the blanket statement for me to really understand if I'm doing well or if something is out of balance and what that balance is. And then I can look at some of those specific areas. But recognizing that if I solely focus on my goals in each of these specific silos, that might not necessarily sum up to feeling well and having positive mental health experiences.
So just so that I'm clear, you're saying that this concept of having an overall wellness is an Indigenous concept?
Very much so.
Okay.
Very, very much so. And just the idea that to experience health and well-being and wellness, it's all-encompassing. It includes your social relationships. It includes your spiritual connections. It includes your ability to connect with and steward the land. All of these things are very, very intimately tied into sense of well-being and sense of responsibility and wellness. And so, it's very much a Western colonized way of thinking to want to categorize and segment and silo different things, assuming that they're all going to sum up to a greater whole and a greater being, which isn't always necessarily the case.
And I think this is a kind of a cool concept that you're talking about here, because I don't know if that I've ever thought about it that way. Of course, we all think about, the various parts of our life, such as, work isn't going terribly well right now. So that level of health, wellness, and happiness is low. And so often we get caught up in one section of our life that we are almost blind to how well everything else is going. It's possible to have a terrible or a poor work life, but a fantastic family or home life. financial health. You know, it's like they don't necessarily all intermingle with each other. And I think the idea of looking at it as a whole, again, this is, you know, a segue or a cross reference here between Indigenous History Month and Men's Mental Health Month, is this idea that if you feel poor in one area, take the moment to say, well, I may not be happy with this one segment of my life, but my overall health and all the other areas of my health are good. So I shouldn't let this one drag me down. I should focus on all the other things and be grateful for them. And I think just having that idea of looking at it that way would probably improve a lot of people's outlook on their life and their health.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so true. And you know, even to, in the same way that you talk about through your experience with Pride events, getting to spend more time interacting with people who have been marginalized. You know, I very much resonate with that in terms of the connectivity that I've had with some of the elders experiencing through their stories different experiences that they've had with traumas, both their own traumas but also intergenerational traumas. It really is just a whole appreciation for how these things that we experience in our life can have this profound impact, not only in who we are now, but down the line throughout our generations, through our kids, our grandchildren, all these sorts of things. And so if that's true, that's even more of an argument that we need to recognize that we as a whole self can support and be supported by a whole number of things. And as you say, not to just get weighed down if one component of our life isn't going our way, that we have the strength and the foundation in other areas, and being able to recognize the strengths that we have when we have them, and elements of gratitude and things like that are huge in there as well.
Okay. So I think you've touched on a concept that is, I wouldn't say unique to, but is a big takeaway for you from your time working with Indigenous communities. What would you say might be a couple other takeaways that you might have from men's mental health awareness, and what would be one from LGBTQ that you could maybe share? A takeaway, a concept, something along those lines.
Yeah, it's all about, to me, creating safe spaces. And this one, I think, is something that I've experienced in my experiences getting to be a part of Indigenous ceremony, and in my experience and understanding kind of what and why we celebrate Pride. And it's all about creating those safe and sacred and ethical spaces. And to me, one of the things that men at an individual level are not very good at, and certainly speaking for myself, and I think I can speak for you in this regard, we're typically so eager to challenge ourselves, to achieve, to overachieve, to pursue the next thing, that we don't always hold the space for ourselves to feel safe, to feel comfortable, to feel okay, to feel well, because we're always in pursuit of the next thing. And
so true.
The ability to balance growth with feeling well is something that's very, very challenging. What I see, though, in both the way that we celebrate Pride and then in the way that our Indigenous peoples, sorry, let me back up. I should never say, and as a white person, I should never say our Indigenous people. That is a very possessive thing, and so I just want to roll that back.
Okay.
Indigenous communities' ceremonies are all about creating these safe, ethical spaces for people to be the best version of themselves, to speak authentically and speak their own truth. And so I think that as men trying to advocate for the mental health of ourselves and other men, I think there's a lot that we can learn from the way that both Indigenous peoples, through ceremony and the Pride celebrations and the Pride movement create those safe and ethical spaces for people to be who they are.
I like it. I'm going to ask myself that same question of, what is these concepts or these takeaways or something that I can share. And I'm going to admit that my time exploring in, the history and the environment and culture of Indigenous communities has been very minimal. So I feel like this is something that you can talk much more about than I can. However, just having that understanding that time has been so small makes me want to experience more and learn more, which I think is kind of the point of this month and celebrating this as part of the month, is so that you can have that introspective moment and go, I don't actually know a lot about this. I should probably learn so that I can be more aware of the things I do not know. Because, of course, that old saying, we don't know what we don't know. But what I will say that I can talk a little bit more about is going to be, of course, men's mental health and the LGBTQ and Pride Month. In specific, what I want to talk about, and I haven't shown it to you yet, it was a video that's been going around, I believe, on TikTok. And it was of a post-transition man that was talking about, the video started of basically saying men will never understand the camaraderie that is found in women's bathrooms. And it's a super kind of funny concept, because as men, we're like, what are you talking about? And it's just a video of all these girls, having a great time and basically partying. And I think one of them was doing pull-ups off of the bathroom stall, and they're just laughing and giggling. And he comes on this video to basically say, I never understood just how lonely it was to be a man. And how that seeing that video of these women having this camaraderie in the bathroom made him just recall those times, and how it made him feel even more lonely, because he's like, men don't have that. Like, we don't, there's no reason for you to talk to another man in a bathroom. If there's a man in a bathroom crying, you feel pity for him. You do not feel camaraderie, and you don't try to reach out, right? There would never be a moment where I have, makeup. Let me share that with you. Like, that, none of that exists. And this is not a closet scenario for a bathroom. This is men in general. You see a man hurting, it is the exception, not the rule, for you to reach out and see if he's okay. And it's a beautiful video, and I'm going to post it in our Discord, which we'll talk about later. But it was very eye-opening for me, and very affirming for me to go that not only in this month, but in all months, as men, as people, doesn't matter how you identify, you should be changing this stigma of not my circus, not my monkey, right? The concept of, I don't know this person, I don't know what they're going through, I'm not going to get involved. We are human beings, and human beings are social creatures, regardless of who you are, where you come from, how you identify, what your sexual orientation is, anything. We need to be there for each other, especially now as the world just seems to turn more and more problematic. At least that's how it feels sometimes. We need to be there for each other. And it's exciting to me to see that these, monthly or daily or weekly awarenesses are being allotted on our calendars, because it's starting to show the world is shifting to having more of an understanding and more of an acceptance of everything. And that our people, whether it is that we have younger people that are more aware and more open to it, or that the whole world is changing its philosophy, it's that we are now becoming more aware that we have to be willing to look at that person that is having a hard time and saying, you look like you're having a hard time. How can I help?
Yeah.
Right? And I'm not saying I want men's bathrooms to be party places where we, I don't know, have a pocket purse beer or something. But I'm saying that sometimes the impact that you can make on another human being, the massive impact you can have on another human being for the better, is often in the smallest of gestures.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I want the world to be more open to that, because I have made it a personal mission and goal of mine to always be, as we've talked about before, that person that tries to ask the right questions and to probe a little bit further and to get you to talk about the things that maybe you wouldn't talk about normally, so that I can become your biggest cheerleader. And I want that to be for everybody. I want everybody, if they can't provide that, to at least feel that that's available for them. Because I know there's stages in my life that would have gone very differently if I felt I had that. Right?
I love everything that you just shared, and I'm looking forward to seeing that video, because I haven't seen it either. I mean, I think it's one of the things that keeps coming back for me, and I think I've spoken to this metaphor in a previous episode. It's one of my favorite metaphors. It's that when we feel like we're drowning, the last thing that we're doing is taking a second to look around for water wings.
Yeah.
And when we're feeling in a state where we're experiencing poor mental health at an individual level, it can be so hard for us to look past the end of our own nose and to try to seek out opportunities to even acknowledge other people. So this idea that you're talking about of, well, why is it that we don't go and look for opportunities to support other people? You know, if we're so deep in our own shit that we, we can't really acknowledge or appreciate, much less feel like we're in a position to support another human being, it can be a very daunting thing to try to do that. But have you ever in your life felt worse after helping another person?
Not a moment.
Right.
Never.
So, and I think this is something that we need to look to remind ourselves of, is we need to recognize that even when we're at our worst and we're struggling in whatever way or ways we might be affected and struggling, that act of service, that act of checking in on somebody, making that phone call, which we've talked about countless times, looking to be able to support and help somebody out, is always going to make us feel better. It's going to release those endorphins in ourselves that make us feel better, and hopefully it's a snowball effect, and hopefully that creates a safe space for us to be able to gain some momentum in addressing the things that we're challenging with, or looking actively for those water wings, finding the support that we need, or at least making ourselves open and available to receiving that support.
I really liked your question of have you ever felt worse after helping someone or being of service for someone. And I actually spoke about this a weekend ago, 2 weekends ago. I was given the opportunity to be a master of ceremonies for one of our work events for a morning, and I always adore those kind of moments. I love doing that kind of stuff. And I opened the day talking about the concept of human work. Now you'll notice I said human work, not men work, women work, straight male work, like human work. And it was the idea that there are these moments, regardless of how great everything in your life may be going or not going, where you feel stuck and you feel without purpose. And in my experience, the only remedy for that is to go and be of service for someone. Because the moment you do that, in whatever fashion, it provides such healing to the soul, in my opinion. It lights you up. It makes you feel so great. And again, that can be in the smallest of ways. It can be helping someone unload their groceries, right? I helped my neighbor. I was in my backyard and my neighbor hollers over the fence and she goes, "Hey, you're strong. Come help me lift this." And I just went over and it took me 30 seconds to do. And I rode that high for the day.
Yeah.
Right? And I just go do human work. And maybe on those months or those days where we're celebrating a specific group, go do human work in that group. Because maybe it will expose you to something you weren't aware of. Right? To me, it's so exciting because there's so many opportunities at our fingertips now to explore these different areas that we weren't even aware of before. Right? That to me is the benefit of all of these awarenesses, right? And these celebrations is that it is exposing us to new things. And I think that's so exciting. It's an opportunity for growth.
So what's next then? So what's I think we've kind of talked around and talked through some pretty significant opportunities for action, for movement to support our own mental health, to advocate for the mental health of everyone, but certainly men in the context of this podcast, and also June being Men's Mental Health Month. If you could leave everyone with strategies or takeaways or calls to action, what is it that you are looking for people to take away and go do in support of their own mental health?
In support of their own mental health, or more in support of their own mental health in regards to the events that we're celebrating?
Could be any
Could be
or
anything.
all of the above.
Okay. Well, then I'll answer it. I'll answer both. What can you do in support of your own mental health? Go do human work. Right? Go do something that is of service to another person, and let that feed your health and purpose and well-being, because it really does make you feel amazing. And then I think that the big call to action is be intentional about these events. When you hear about them, don't just say, oh, cool, it's Pride Month. Find an event, find a person in your life, find even as simple as researching on the internet. Take that moment to expose yourself to something related to that time of celebration. Because if we're going to be in a world where we're always being exposed to these new things, then we have to become worldly people and take the time to actually be willing to expose ourselves to it. Yeah. What about you? What are yours?
I think yours are fantastic. I just want to co-sign on all of that really quickly. I think that the act of going out and participating, whether it be in a Pride event or, go attend a powwow or a round dance.
Oh, that sounds like so much fun, actually.
Oh, unreal. It's a blast. It really, really is. Go and immerse yourself in different communities and understand and learn and experience. All those things that you're saying, I think, are 100% true. I keep coming back to this idea of inclusion, and we've kind of danced around it a little bit, and I think that once this all comes out, inclusion is going to be a big part of the title of this podcast episode. But to me, I think that a lot of what we think of as one of the traditional gender roles of men is the act of providing for their communities. We've talked about this lots, and whether or not you prescribe to traditional gender roles, putting that aside, I think that all of us humans feel this need to be of service and provide to people around us. So if that's the goal, and if the goal is as men to be best equipped to provide for the communities in our life, wouldn't it make sense that we should be able to take the time, as you say, to learn as much about the communities around us so that we can best service them? If we're going to try to provide, if we're going to try to support and be of value to others, we need to know what it is that they need. And I say that a little bit crassly in that, obviously we don't want to assume that anybody needs us, right? Like, we're here to be of value and be of support. We're not assuming that there's the need there and imposing that on any other group by any means. I certainly don't want that to be a takeaway from this. But if our goal is to support and be an ally and we need to understand something about the communities that we're being an ally to. And if there's a place for us to be of service, then we need to participate to be able to do that. So I love that. I also think then on an individual level, it's being willing to confront any biases, assumptions that we have. We've talked a lot about that in the last few episodes, so feel free to double back and take a gander in talking about assumptions and bias. And I think, too, coming back to one of my initial points, it's just something as simple as getting outside. You know, doing human work's important. Getting outside's important. Yeah. Go find a nice park and go for a walk.
Even if it is smoky outside.
Sit down in the grass. I believe it was Elder Doreen Healy who, one of the teachings that I've experienced from her was just go outside at any time of year, take your shoes and socks off and just stand in the grass and just like feel yourself literally connecting with that nature. And on that note too, I will put in a plug that we've talked about. June is Men's Mental Health Month, National Indigenous History Month. We've talked about Pride Month. It is also, we'll tag on a fourth one, a surprise bonus one. June is also Recreation and Parks Month. And I think that when we talk about advocating and supporting our own mental health, what a great way for us to do that by taking the time, go and immerse ourselves in the beautiful parks in whatever place in the world you live, and recreate and pursue leisure activities in a way that can help rejuvenate and support yourself.
Love it. Love it. All right. I think we should bring the episode to a close here.
I think so. Tell us about Discord.
Yeah. So if you haven't seen already, we have launched a Men and Community Discord group, or a Discord server is what it's called. Discord is essentially just a place to come and chat. And the way that I've organized it is that we have kind of a general chat area, but we also have ones committed to each individual episode. So, if you wanted to talk about something that pertains to this episode, find the video that I mentioned in this episode. You'll find it under episode 12. So you can go in there, you can view it, you can see these resources. It's got links to all of our socials. It's got an opportunity for you to actually message Matt and I directly if there's something you want to talk about, places for episode ideas, and more importantly, a place to form a community for all of us. I know that a lot of us, people that listen to this podcast, already know each other in the real world, but there are some people that don't, or there's people from various friend groups and ways that we know each other that might have an opportunity to form some new great bonds. So I would encourage you to check that out, if only to see the video that I'm talking about, but hopefully maybe more, and to be part of a community. And that will be in our link tree. You'll find a link for that, and I'm working on putting it in a couple other places too. But yeah, the link tree for now.
Fantastic. So check that out, everyone. We'd love to have you as a part of the Discord community, and as always, continue to reach out and connect with us via all of our other social channels, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, wherever it is that you're listening to your podcast, whether it is YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, etc., Apple Podcasts, Apple Music.
Yeah.
And take the time today and go and do something to make yourself feel a little bit better.
Love it. All right, guys. Thanks for joining us.
Take care.
Bye.